The first story comes from the northwestern part of Japan, up in a small town in the mountains. We were watching Independence Day, my son and I. Don't ask us why we were watching that, other than that was the only thing on TV that night. And we heard some footsteps coming up the wooden stairs, and we felt a kind of heavy uneasiness. So I grabbed my digital camera, and of course at that period of time digital photography wasn't as advanced as it is now, and just started taking flashes all over there. And I had heard that the best way to capture a ghost is to photograph the television on or off. So I photographed the TV, and I got this image. And at first I thought that the samurai-looking figure was our intruder. But after reviewing the video, I rented the video later to confirm this, it appeared to be that somebody was just simply walking in front of the camera as part of the shot. But what made this photograph particularly interesting was the fox face next to the person who does look like a samurai. He's got a top knot on his hair. And this is what was really intriguing. I tried to repeat this photograph over and over again with little success, and later asked the local community if they had any unusual stories about foxes and stuff in the neighborhood. And sure enough, in the community just down the road from where we were, there was a small shrine dedicated to foxes. So we felt that there was probably something connected to that. On top of that, the actual building that we were living in, behind us was a rather large graveyard. So that also may have had something to do with it as well. And in all, it was a pretty creepy shot. And that night was, for the rest of the night, was kind of difficult to sleep. The next shot took place in a small town in the mountains on the southeast side of Japan. It was a small community near Kyoto that had just a few hundred kids at their elementary school, which I was teaching at the time. And we were all playing soccer when I took this shot. And next to the boy's head, you can see this very, very strange looking face. Now, normally I could just think that this was part of something that was inside the building, or a reflection or something like this. But having been in that town for some time, a lot of very strange things happened. My cat that we had as a pet at the time would go wild, which is another story I'll tell later. I heard stories of one woman who had this kind of stalker-like ghost every time she was driving to work. And I have another photograph of another ghost that's related to the same town, which I'll show later. And you look up close, and this face looks like some maybe something from the early samurai period, maybe the Edo period or Meiji period in Japan. And this school had its fair share of unexplainable events. But the place that I was living, which was next to this, was far, far more scary. We found huge spiders in the place, and monkeys would come down from the mountains and tap on the windows and stuff for food. And a lot of our cats would go wild. You would hear things with nothing around. It was a very, very strange place indeed. And later I found out that this area used to be a traveling spot for a lot of people to travel one part, usually from maybe even Tokyo down into Kyoto. So it has a little bit of history as well, even though the community was quite small. The next shot is related to the boy playing soccer. This woman worked right across the street from the school, and I came over to take a portrait of her. And while I took the shot, she had this huge bright smile on it. But just as I took the shot, it sort of dimmed down. She felt a cold chill, and she explained to me later. And when I developed the film, sure enough, there was something passing in front of her. Now this could be explained as some sort of chemical mistake that sort of warped the black and white photograph. but it didn't seem to leak into outside of the negative itself, and no other part of the film had this particular chemical mixture problem or anything like that. So it looked pretty much like a paranormal shot. She also had a story about when she drives to work, which I explained earlier about the boy, that she had this. She always felt like this some man was always stalking her in her car. She'd get in the car with her, and as she drove to work, she always felt like there was something there. The next photograph is taken in Shizuoka Prefecture with my wife at that time at her family's house. Now, at that time, her mother had already passed on from cancer, and listening to my wife tell me stories about what kind of person her mother was, she was a pretty awful individual. She would often just simply not play with the kids and ignore them. She probably had some rumors that she slept around several other people in the neighborhood and stuff like this, and was not what you consider your model mother. And on top of that, her father was quite the opposite of her person, a very serious individual. And this led to a lot of strain within our own relationship later. But I did go to visit their house one summer on a very, very hot day, and she was sleeping on the floor, and I took a photograph with a slide photography at the time, just around when digital photography was coming out. And this face appears up on the shoji, the rice paper door there. And the face looks exactly like her mother, same hairstyle and everything, only that it's extremely twisted and distorted. And this distortion seems to me like it represents what she looked like with the demons inside of her, and like she probably ended up in the inferno somewhere because of her awful behavior. She really seemed to like to hurt other people, and this was causing psychological problems with my wife at the time. So I often wondered the stories of the Dokorokubi, which is a kind of ghost story, one of the yokai in Japan, is if this what they might look like. So the last photograph here is sort of an artist's impression of what that might be. The corrupt souls, where they end up, look something like this. The last photograph for today is a very difficult kind of ghost to shoot. In a later video, I'll perhaps make a list of all the kinds of ghosts that I have seen and experienced. There's many different kinds. And this one is a shadow ghost. As you can see, my son and I were walking to the local 7-Eleven, and it was a cold night, and this is the fog you hear here. It's just my breath in front of the camera. And again, it's a cheap digital camera of the 1990s. And as we were walking along, again, we felt something like something was following us. This is again the same town as the Fox photograph. This town was very, very haunted, and I'm not the only one who felt things in this town. Many other people did as well. So I told my son, "Oh, I feel something, and I hear something," and he started to give that spooky look on his face because he was just joking around. And I could hear this old woman saying in Japanese, "Sabashiyo, Sabashiyo, I'm lonely, I'm lonely." And so I just started taking many different shots at all angles and all around me. And this one shot stood up where you can see the light is to the left of me, and this shadow is standing straight up. So it can't be either my son or my shadow, because the light is on the left side away from us, and it would be impossible for any of us to cast the shadow. It's in front of us, not behind us. And there's this dark figure standing there. This photograph is enhanced and made in black and white so it's easy to see. Uh, a lot of people got to argue, oh, that's just a mistake of the digital camera and stuff like that, but that's not what we felt that night. The lonely woman felt very, very sad, lonely, heavy, and was just drifting around for attention. She must have died well into her 70s or maybe 80s, I'm not sure. Felt like around that age. Another related story, I was working at the nearby school in the same town. I could hear another woman saying the same thing. When she was lying, the old folks of the town were lining up to get their health check, and I kept hearing this woman saying, "Watashi no ban itsu nano? Watashi no ban itsu nano? When is my turn? When is my turn?" And I started to get really dizzy and heavy, and I realized that the woman was dead. So I just simply told her, I said, "You're dead. Go find your makers," kind of thing in my consciousness, over and over again, kind of a prayer and a meditation I did at the moment. She did disappear. I don't know what happened to her, if she figured out that she had actually passed on or not. But right after that, I did that small prayer. I felt very, very light. So again, this town had many stories like this. In fact, a lot of people in this town, more often than not, just for no reason, would commit suicide. A man had hung himself down the street from where we were walking here. A piano teacher who was well liked in the town suddenly committed suicide. The local nurses had pointed out the incidence of depression and stuff were higher in this town than anywhere else they had worked. There's another fascinating story related to this town about a woman named Masako who disappeared and was murdered and came back to haunt the place. It's such a fascinating story that I'll make a separate video for that at another time. But I want you to thank you for looking at these 5 stories. There's many, many more to come. There's a place you can subscribe, and please hit the button if you want to hear more of these stories.